Alright folks, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about Proving Grounds, and in particular, whether or not it's worth it to rush Proving Grounds. Is it worth it to spend additional crystals on these characters in order to get them faster? And then, is that worth it? Does that make sense? Now, what I will say is this is very different than those of you who, and it's not showing for me right now, but the Conquest Pass Plus for $30. When you buy that, it does give you an extra day of Proving Grounds. That is extremely valuable, right? There's a lot of value there. However, the one thing you've got to consider is you can't say, oh, well, that $30 is getting me an extra, in each of these nodes. Obviously, I don't have them, but they cost 2,200 crystals to refresh during Conquest. You can't say that you're going to get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You can't take that 15 and say that you're going to get what, 33,000 crystals worth of value, right? Because 33,000 crystals worth of value. You can't make that argument. Because the one thing I will say there is the value of that is only worth it if you're actually able to act on that character before you would have naturally obtained them. So, are you going to be able to, by buying that, work on every single one of those characters, get them all to relics and Zetaed out in the time that you would have naturally earned their shards in Conquest? And for most of you, the answer is no. So the Conquest Pass Plus, while it can be nice, you only really want to look at the value for the characters that you would be able to really speed up and take advantage of. So I wanted to share that before we do go any further about the Conquest Pass Plus and kind of set the tone for how we're going to be analyzing this, right? So with that said, please subscribe, comment down below. I want to give a shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you guys are ever interested, that link is below, along with a link to our Discord server. I can't thank these folks enough for everything they do. I am humbled, blessed, and honored to be able to create content for you guys. And without you, this channel would not be possible. So thank you again. Let's get in here. Let's talk about, is it worth it to refresh Proving Grounds? So, folks, for Proving Grounds, the quick and dirty, right? You get character shards through Proving Grounds. This unlocks at 4 million galactic power, and then you actually have to beat the node, and some of these are not as straightforward as others. However, if you are able, day one, hey, I got to Proving Grounds, you are looking at a 17-month unlock period. It's going to take you're going to get 20 shards per character. If you start at 0, it's going to be 17 months. So one of the things a lot of players ask is, hey, Phil, is it worth it for me to do a conquest? Is it worth it to refresh this to get the character a month early? So we're going to kind of break down this math a little bit and show you guys that. So what I did here is I created a little spreadsheet just to kind of show the math. Now, what you have to recognize is, number one, this math is not exact, because the thing that we're assuming here is that you were promoted last season. Right, so last season you were promoted, or you're promoted, right? You were in Erodium 1, now you're moving to Kyber 5, and you're going to rush this Conquest character, right? So you've moved up. It doesn't really happen that way. Normally it's okay, you get promoted mid-season, so your math, your return will get worse than this. This was just the easiest way I could do it. Here's your crystal cost, 2,200 for a month early. The biggest thing here that you've got to recognize, you only can count 9 Grand Arena matches towards the ROI. After 9, you would have had the character anyways. So you can only, and that's, again, that works like the one, if you're like, hey, I'm going to actually spend 6,000 crystals and get them 3 months early, then you're going to take the 27 GAC matches to figure out, is it worth it to do that, right? Is it worth it? So let's kind of talk this through. So the first thing up here is I've got Erodium 1 to Kyber 5, and then Kyber, moving up one level every single time, right? So Erodium to Kyber 5, K5 to K4, 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1. This promoted same win-loss is your assumption is that you went 5 and 4, right? Our assumption in Grand Arena always is you go 5 and 4. I recognize for some of you that's not the reality, but that is the assumption that Fat Phil makes because it's easier. It's the way the math works, and frankly, I'm able to go 5 and 4, so, that's what I do. But anyway, so with the promoted same win-loss, here are the crystals that you are going to earn from that. Moving up from Erodium to Kyber 5, you're going to get this many crystals. Right? It's the, G22, which is right here. Right? So you're going from here to here, right? From here to here. So you're gaining almost 1,000 crystals. This is calculating all of your wins, daily payouts, everything for the month. So before you, freak out, this is calculating everything that for that entire month, you are going to get an extra 980 crystals. That is a loss of 1,220 crystals to what you rushed in Proving Grounds. If you go 6 and 3, you get extra win crystals, and your weekly payout goes up by 1. You still lose 570 crystals. You need to go 7 and 2 in Kyber 5 from where you were in Erodium 1 before you break even. Right? You need to go 7 and 2, and then you'll break even by 80 crystals. With that same logic, going from, all the way up to, Kyber 2 to Kyber 1, when you look at the math here and you look at the way it shakes out, even going 6 and 3, you will still lose 190 crystals if you only win 1 extra Grand Arena. You need to win 2 extra GACs. You need to go 7 and 2, which is a lot more challenging than it seems. After that, this right here tells you everything you need to know that many players, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to rush them and I'll win more in Grand Arena. You've got to win this much more. So 7 and 2 is not an easy feat, right? It's not easy to do this. And again, this is assuming that you were promoted and then rush the Conquest unit. If you have to get, hey, I was in Erodium 1, got into Kyber 5 because I rushed Bane, this math gets worse, right? This math gets significantly worse because you were getting the win crystals from Erodium 1 instead of the Kyber 5 win crystals, which there is a difference for. So, this right here kind of shows you just how kind of flawed that logic is, that you can't justify rushing the character solely based off of Grand Arena. So there needs to be other factors, right? We need to be thinking about other areas that it makes sense to potentially rush that character, because that 2,200 crystals is a lot. So other things that you could do, right? Some other things that maybe you could do that would be, beneficial, or that you could argue, hey, you know what? Maybe this will help. Think about Rise of the Empire. Maybe your guild gets some extra waves here. All right, that is what it is. But think about the raid right now. We've got the Order 66 raid. And again, I know for some of you, you're like, well, Phil, am I really going to get anything out of this? But the argument would be, maybe there's a raid character that, a Conquest unit that would be in the raid. Again, right now, that's not the case, but, who knows down the line, maybe that happens. Think about when, I think when the Crate Dragon raid launched, I do believe Maul was available in Proving Grounds. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was the case. So, never say never. But you could maybe say, oh, well, I'm going to get X amount more currency from the raid, and that's going to lead to, X amount more rewards, and, that's good, right? You could maybe use that logic. Territory wars. I'd make a much stronger case for territory wars rather than territory battles, simply because I think, and again, I don't have territory war active at the time, but, there is a lot more that, hey, if I'm able to get Darkside Ray, and that means my Kylo's going to get better, or I'm going to get, Ezra Bridger Exile, and that does XYZ. Those things can absolutely, get, paid off in territory wars. But just looking at it from a Grand Arena perspective, as you guys saw, your win-loss has to go so crazy high. And if your win-loss stays the same, right, then you're just getting the character early, which is fine, but it's not justified through your crystals. You're just, you're allowed to do things because it's fun, but don't think it gets justified by the crystals. That's a common misconception with Grand Arena. The other thing I would say too with Proving Grounds, when players ask me, hey, is it worth it to rush Proving Grounds? I tell a lot of players, what you've got to think about is, okay, you're going to rush that character, but what will it cost you, right? Like, think about that Avengers Endgame meme, right? Like, what did it cost you? Everything, right? Or is that Endgame or Infinity War? I can't remember. They all run together. But, like, do you have the ability, if you go and try to rush, say, hey, I'm going to rush to get Darth Bane and I'm going to rush to get Ezra Bridger, do you have the resources to invest in both of them? Like, do you have all the resources you need to get all the Zetas for Bane, all the Zetas for Ezra, the Omicrons that they need? Like, if you don't have the resources to make that happen, then you spent all those crystals for nothing, right? You should have just waited until you had more resources to build. And that's something that I think sometimes doesn't always enter into the brain, is all those other things. Think about the mods. There's an aspect here that if you don't have all those extra things you need to make the character worth it, it kind of becomes a problem, and you spend all these resources that you didn't really need to spend. So there's also an aspect there of, how many characters realistically could you rush in Proving Grounds. And one of the other things I have seen that players do, and I don't hate this, you do have these, legend tokens. And you can buy, for what, 1,500 tokens, you can buy 10 shards, you can buy 20 for 3,000. I would recommend always trying to get 10, right? This will save you 2,200 crystals worth of refreshes, which I would say is worth it. That's a month. Then at that point, it's all right. You've either got to, from there, you need to spend another 3,000 to save another month. Like, you don't just buy 20 Commander Tano shards. That's, you've got to buy 10 or 30. Like, because of the way you only get 20 at a time, you need 330 for a character. It's not even math. So that's why there's that 10 available, is because they're saying, hey, if you want to get more, you need to, and again, I don't know if it looks like not every character is available in here. So that's another whole, subject of got to figure out which characters you can and can't buy in here and, work through that. So, maybe your character isn't in here, your SOL. But if you are going to buy, with these things, you've got to buy them like in groups of, 10 to then 30 and 50 and so on and so forth. And not that this is an awful thing, right? Like, I want to be very clear about that. This isn't awful. Like, this is, if you are free to play, I would argue that some of these conquest units, particularly like Commander Tano or, Ben Solo if you have Rey, Darth Malgus, they're far more valuable than Omicrons are to you, right? Like, that's, I would make that case. So, this doesn't cost the crystals and will allow you to get through Proving Grounds faster. Again, same argument applies here. Do you have the resources to take advantage of the character? And it doesn't just mean by resources do you have the gear, like, do you have the teams? If you don't have Rey, no reason to rush Ben Solo. If you don't have Rey or Kenobi, no reason to rush Commander Tano type situation, right? You've got, again, there's a lot of variables to consider. What I will say kind of at the end here in conclusion on, is it worth it to rush, Proving Grounds? It's really only worth it if you have everything in place, you think you're going to get a lot more wins, you think you're going to get a lot more resources, and, obviously if you have the stuff. Here's my Proving Ground spiel. I've said this a lot. Just kind of, at the end here, circling back. My biggest issue with Proving Grounds is I think it's one of the most outdated parts of this game. And I'm going to make a video where I talk about like every single outdated thing and why it's out there. But with Proving Grounds, my biggest issue is that for some players, they never played the Razor Crest or Commander Tano or Maul Conquest. And you think about your Conquest rewards. There's Zetas in there. There's Aero Magnifiers. There's Signal Data. There's a lot of resources in those that many players just don't get access to because they weren't playing at that time. Yet the game is giving you the character shards. And I kind of have a problem that while they're giving the character shards, which is nice, you've missed out on all that extra gear that, I was able to accumulate along with the shards. And while I recognize that, there's a advantage to have been playing this game for a long time, I do feel CG needs to come back in and think through, the way Proving Grounds rewards work, because if you go through your Proving Grounds, you get all those characters. The resources you have to spend on them are far less than what I had when I was working through them. And I think that's a bottleneck that I hope they solve. So I want to at least kind of talk about that a little bit now. We'll get more into that in a whole other video, but I hope this helps you understand some of that math behind, is it worth rushing Proving Grounds? Please like and subscribe. And if you're ever interested in just kind of, chatting around, join the Discord, tag me, tag one of the mods. Love to hear from you guys. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you next one. Cheers, my friends.